Movie maker, I require your strongest movies, for I'm going to the theater.
My movies are too strong for you.
Movie maker, listen to me. I absolutely require your strongest movies, for I am going to the theater.
You do not understand. My movies are far too strong for you.
Movie maker, enough of these games. Give me your strongest movies, for I am going to the theater tonight.
Okay, here's challengers. Two bros chilling on a tennis court 78 feet apart because they're not gay. Luca Guadagnino may have shied away from having Timothée Chalamet fuck that peach and call me by her name, but that doesn't stop him from using every churro and banana available in challengers. Here, he turns his attentions to the world of tennis as he focuses on the competitive aspirations of players Art Donaldson and Patrick Zweig. Art is struggling after a series of high-profile losses in the lead-up to the US Open, and his coach and wife, ex-tennis prodigy Tashi Duncan, is trying to get him back on his feet with an easy win. Patrick, meanwhile, has everything to lose in this tournament, living out of his car that he is. But is this the first time these three have encountered, or have they entangled in the past? Screenwriter Justin Kuritzkes brews one hell of a steamy love potion to sell. Sure, Chani might have missed out on Polo Atreides, but she makes up for it handsomely with Prince Charles but hot in that twink from West Side Story.
You wish you never ever met her at all.
All right. We get to talk about a real movie this week.
Yeah, a little bit of a swing of the pendulum.
I know that, this might be kind of a controversial opinion, but I think that this is a better movie than Rebel Moon Part 2. What the fuck
there.
was that subtitle?
The Scargiver, as in what it did to my brain.
But anyways, yeah, this movie, first of all, I have to say, this trailer for this movie was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've been seeing it for a few months now, and it kind of really caught my attention. It was like, because it's not the kind of movie that I would usually go for, I think.
Sure, yeah.
But, goddamn, they, as the kids say, they cooked with this one.
Yeah, I think the trailer does a really good job of giving you tone, and I don't think anyone does just like tone in a film or creating atmosphere in a film quite like Guadagnino. You get a flavor of that, and then you kind of get a sense of the general trajectory it's going to go on, but like, I think focusing on her like tennis injury is such an interesting, like that's definitely a big facet of the film, but then kind of where we end up sort of turning our focus is completely different in the best of ways.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. It's like, and I'm trying to think of like, where should we begin this discussion, honestly? Because I feel like there's so many ways I can kind of like start to tackle it.
Mm-hmm.
Because but everything is so kind of interconnected. It's like, it's hard to decide where to begin.
Yeah, when I was writing out these scribblings that I sent you, I kind of like, there's a couple technical aspects we can kind of draw out, just at least shout out. They'll obviously kind of return. I think maybe the easiest way, because without, we can kind of initially, I think we're both very positive about this film. It's an interesting movie and like story, and it's finally one of the select few sports movies for me.
Yeah.
I think, it doesn't really give anything away to say that the way the story is structured is really interesting. It jumps around in time over like a almost 2 decades span of time as it explores these central 3 characters. And the way I was kind of structuring my like thoughts was more like kind of looking at each individual character and kind of stepping into it progressively there. It could also be a holy disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, because the way the movie's structured, it begins and ends with this challenger tournament. Mm-hmm. It's the title of the movie. Between you have Art and Patrick, or Pat, and basically that as this tournament is going on between them, we will step back to like previous moments in their lives. Not even necessarily like it's like, oh, starting at the very far past and progressing through the future, but it'll be like 1 week before, 15 years before, 14 years before, 13 years before, 1 week before, that kind of thing. It's more about the revelations of the character
and driving tension both like through the relationships and through just the storytelling than it is like A to B to C.
Yeah, it's like it's really good at saying like, oh, we're gonna plumb this far back in their past and we're gonna find this specific element that we're gonna highlight first. Kind of start building the bricks with these characters. We'll go back a little bit further to start developing more of like how the relationship is. We'll go back only 6 months this time to highlight this particular quality of this character, so on and so forth.
Exactly.
Which is honestly like a really great way to kind of tell this story. Just kind of like slowly unfolding each each little character, almost like it's like you have these 3 flower buds here and you're slowly going around opening each of them up to see what's inside. It's very exciting.
Yeah, but I think the opening sequence really does kind of give you the totality of what you can kind of expect from the film, from a visual standpoint, from like a character kind of, at least an introductory standpoint, this sort of central match that plays out over the course of multiple sets. We kind of break the characters down and whatnot, but like we get this opening statement that like the film begins kind of very sort of, I don't know, sedate and like documentarian almost, where they're all just kind of getting ready for the match, but then like the second that it gets called, like the score kicks in and the camera just like rockets in over the shoulder of the chair umpire and the volley starts and just like becomes balletic almost, and it's just like, okay, we're in for a thrill ride.
Yeah. Honestly, even like, because like right from the movie, for a moment I was like, is there going to be no studio logos in this? Because like it just starts with like a shot of each of the 3 main characters, and it's kind of like, oh boy, oh, we're already going here. Or maybe it's just telling that, what you're describing as documentary, and I'm like, oh, this is so exciting. Oh boy.
Yeah, kind of.
But yeah, like it's once it gets in, like, the energy is up. And also I just have to say, like, the goddamn cinematography on this thing, especially when it came to like the tennis.
Yeah, I think.
Oh my god,
it's so interesting because he was working with DP that he's worked with before, Sayambu Mukdeepram, and he did Call Me by Your Name, which is a completely different like language. It's a lot more sort of languid and like calm in its like the way that the story is being told visually. He's also worked with the Thai director Apichap Pangirasatakul, who did like Maria and Uncle Boonmi, who can recall his past lives, and those are like very meditative movies, so it's absolutely bonkers to see like tennis racket POV shots and just some of the crazy amazing like bravura camera work that's going on. It's so exciting to like, it's not like incoherent, what's going on, but it's just very like immersive.
Oh yeah, there's this trick that they do several times in the movie, and it's really exciting to be able to say, or to be able to ask, how did they do that in the year of our Lord 2024 when it comes to movies? Because like there's this thing they would often do where as tennis matches going on, someone will hit the ball and then it flies like at the camera.
Yeah, that's really fun.
And like every time it kind of made me do a little jump to see like, oh. Almost like I almost feel like I could feel it going by my head. I was like, oh.
Yeah, there's like a mix of like, there's a couple shots where they're like bouncing the ball and you can see it from like directly below, and it's like, okay, they clearly just took like a plexiglass panel and just put some tape over it and like bounced it, and so there's some fun like kind of, you know, film trickery, like old school sort of tricks going on, but then other stuff is like so like I don't know how they pulled some of that stuff off.
I love when it's like as a point of view of from the ball, and it's like going back and forth, and it's like, oh my god,
it just really creates this like sense of immersion, and like kind of tennis as like this whole language unto itself rather than something to be observed. It's being like experienced in the most sort of visceral sense.
Exactly. Oh my god, it was so. Yeah, the visuals of this movie were just absolutely wild. Like I was so hooked on, and yeah, just like that right there. Just like everything just feels like so crisp. Like as the match is going, like not just like those kind of like crazy shots as well, but also just things like the way that camera will move around, like it goes from like Pat, he's sitting at the edge of the tennis court, like, you know, there's like a brief break that's going on, and I'll like go up to the referee sitting up on the chair, and then it goes back down to Art, and it's just the way it's moving, it feels so dynamic. You're like,
yeah, it's really like observational, and it kind of like is telling you a lot of like different pieces of information about stuff that's happening simultaneously.
Yeah, and that was a thing that I noticed that through, I want to say it's like the first, 5, maybe 10 minutes, there was almost no dialogue. And yet you could really tell like everything that's going on, all the dynamics, everything that's happening. And again, between the directing and the writing, that's when you know, like, you have people who know what they are doing.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because like he gives such a confident communication of, you have these, you know, Tashi and Art and Patrick, and you kind of get an initial sense of where things stand, and then the rest of the movie like is devoted entirely to like breaking down our perception of that and revealing what the actuality of it is.
Oh my god, yeah, because like from the get-go you're kind of like, oh, you can see how things are going, but then you get more into everyone's psychologies, and it gets both, it's like at turns it's kind of heartbreaking, at turns it's kind of a little sexy,
just a little bit,
because as you go through the three main characters, you realize that each of them are broken in their own ways. You know, each of them, like even the ones where it's like I'm like a little bit more sympathetic to one than the other, they're all kind of scumbags on at least some level. But that might even be a stronger, but it's like they all have the capability, and they all are at points not very nice people.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a matter of like discovering where their priorities lie.
Yeah, exactly.
And how that affects each other.
And it's so fascinating. Also, do not let Twitter find this movie, please. And also, okay, so there's one aspect of this that I thought was really fascinating, and that was the way that audio levels were kind of balanced at different points, especially with like early on. We're kind of following Art as he's going through these competitions and everything, and we get the idea that he's not really in control of his own life.
Yeah,
you know, like part of that is like Tashi's, like she's like, hey, it's time to get up, here's your diet, here's where you're going, here's the deals that are going to be made, here's how, it's like, you know, she's kind of managing him, you know. But also like
he's very successful, but you get the sense that he's kind of coasting because of these like training, like these like rails that he's been put on.
Exactly. And you get the sense that he's kind of like just kind of going through the motions, and part of how that's communicated is as he's going into a match, like somebody comes up to us like, hey, you know, it's Art. Oh my God, I love you. Can you sign my thing? And it's so kind of like quiet. And later on in the movie, like actual dialogue is, you know, mixed properly, things like that. So you can be like, okay, this is like an actual choice that's being made that, again, gives him the sense of being distant, not being fully present.
And then kind of in contrast, there are moments where, like, even in those first minutes, right after that, and like the volley is announced or the gameplay is started, or later on, there's an encounter between a couple of the characters, like they're kind of confronting one another in a sauna, and the Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score like kicks in, and it's like entirely too loud, where there is dialogue happening, but you can't really hear it very clearly. Yeah. And like in other like occurrences that might be bad, but in a way it almost kind of shows that like in something like the tennis match, this is so heightened, and like it becomes this sort of like dance between the two, or the in the sauna, it's a dance of a different sort. It's this sort of like posturing and stuff that's going on, and that becomes more important because it's more about the like mood of what's happening rather than the actual words being exchanged. And I also just really, really like the score. It's like some kind of like Berlin like 90s nightclub techno with like Giorgio Moroder going on or something. It's so good.
Oh my God, it was so distinct. It just had this perfect energy to it. I was just like, oh yeah. Like,
it just like fucking rips.
Especially like, you know, like as the kind of like, what am I trying to say, the framing device of the big current day match, like as that reaches its climax and like they start going at each other, it's like, oh man, I was like, oh
yeah, this is,
never thought tennis would be so exciting. Oh my God. But yeah, it's just like all of these things really come together, creating a very powerful experience. But I feel like if we want to like dig more into this, we have to start actually talking about like what the characters go through. So like, you want to do like a little spoiler section here? Yeah, spoiler section, spoilers. Which actually you care about because yeah, I think this movie is really good to experience unfolding yourself. Yeah, so we'll start with Art, who's like kind of like the first name I think that gets dropped in the movie actually, because we have like, you know, he has fans who's like, oh, I'm what was it, like art lover or something, like somebody has a sign like that. It's like Art, and
yeah, he's got like he's like a successful established like tennis star.
Yeah,
and kind of our entry point into the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like he's married, he has a kid, he's eating the diet that LinkedIn says you gotta eat if you want to be successful.
Yeah, they've got sponsorships, they have some kind of car ad campaign.
Yeah, and it's, but at the same time, again, like we were talking about, he feels like he's just kind of going through things, like he doesn't, it doesn't seem like he's in control.
Yeah.
And at first, like, you kind of get the idea that, oh, Tashi's like taking advantage of him. It's like very like maliciously. Although that kind of gets like a little bit more like complicated near the end, but we'll get back to that when we talk about her more.
Yeah, she's very focused on his career, kind of by proxy.
Exactly. And the thing is that, so Art, he's a good player, but he's not like an amazing player.
Yeah, and he's kind of been on this like down streak.
Yeah, it's like he's
like losing confidence and stuff.
Yeah, he's not doing real well, and so she Tashi, she's like, hey, why don't we go to like a challenger round, which is kind of like not very prestigious at all.
Yeah. It's at this like country club and it looks kind of janky and there's like, you know, a small bleacher and you're like, oh, okay, this is quaint.
What is it? It's like Jimmy's tire shop or something.
Yeah.
You know, not exactly the US Open. And so, but she's like, you'll get an easy win there. We'll get your confidence back up, and then you can go back to winning.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of so we kind of see like he always like he. Again, this is what I'm talking about, where it's like it's hard to talk about any of these characters first because a lot of who they are is defined by the other two people in the movie. It's like it's their interactions that define who they are.
Exactly.
But to kind
so like yeah, we kind of put a pin in him
because to kind of it's like to veer into Patrick a little bit. It's like because Patrick was always kind of the better player between the two, and so between Patrick and Tashi, Art always kind of felt like he was second fiddle or like a third wheel.
Well, we're kind of getting a little ahead there because they're introduced. Yeah. We don't even know that they know each other, right?
Right. That was such a good reveal, by the way. Just the way that was shot and presented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because initially we meet Art, successful. He's in a hotel. Then we jump over to Patrick. The opening little match notwithstanding, we know they're gonna encounter one another on the court eventually. Yeah. But
because we saw the trailer.
Patrick kind of. Well, yeah, and we saw the first scene. But Patrick, by contrast, is like chilling. He's introduced like in the linear narrative, trying to get into a motel, but he doesn't have any dough, so he has to sleep in the country club parking lot.
Right. Yeah,
but they were doubles partners in high school.
Oh my god, they were doubles partners in high school.
Fire and ice, baby.
Yeah, and again, just the way that this was revealed was so good because the camera moves, you see him. And what I also like is that then puts a question in our minds of, wait a minute, they work together, they play together. What's going on here? And it does that without the movie explicitly saying, wow, will you look at that? I bet you're wondering how they got here, don't you?
Yeah.
Again, just like very tight script that I really appreciate. And then as they go, they play together, they play really well together, and then they go to different part of the competition, and that's where they meet Tashi, and they're both like, oh man.
Mm-hmm. She's kind of on a whole other level because she was sort of like at the point when they're making a name for themselves as kind of a dynamic duo. She's the sort of like rising star, is kind of the next hot thing in these sort of high school tournaments.
Yeah, and then let me check something real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So Josh O'Connor and Mike Faist.
Yeah.
Feist?
Yeah, Feist.
Mike Feist. I'm very sorry, Mike. But did they play the same characters at all the different ages?
Yeah, it was them throughout it all.
I would say really impressive job from makeup here, because goddamn.
Yeah, no, it's hard to kind of like, how do you have someone go from like high school to like their early 30s, mid 30s, and like, I mean, some people do stay looking relatively young, but you do kind of like start to develop into your late 20s and whatnot.
Yeah, it's like,
or just your facial structure changes. And Tashi, we have like the cheat code of like the hair, she's got different hair in different periods, which I don't know how I missed during the trailer, but the other two, it's like, okay.
But yeah, it's a very, again, just like that transformation between the different years. Very impressive. But yeah, to kind of focus back on like Patrick here for a bit. And he decides to kind of go professional, while Art goes to school. He goes to Stanford. Tashi goes to Stanford and everything. And Tashi and Patrick, they start dating. And this is where we start to see the groundwork for the little love triangle here. Because they had a little encounter. All three of them got into a bit of fun together. And she said that whichever one of you wins in the competition tomorrow, I'll give you my number. And Patrick beats Art because Patrick is the better player between the two of them. And he starts dating Tashi.
And this is when we kind of start to establish some patterns for all of them, where their priorities lie.
Yeah, we have, it's like, Patrick is like, Patrick, like, for a while, like, he does seem like, it's like, oh, this guy's been kind of like beaten down and everything. But then you start to find out that he's not quite, he's not quite really honest either. Because it turns out, like, oh, his parents are really rich, which kind of tracks. He's like, wait a minute, he went to boarding school. Why would he be sleeping in his car? And it's kind of like, oh, he has this kind of baggage that he's carrying around with him, himself.
Yeah, when we first meet them, you have the easy kind of contrast that we've been led to believe of, like, even in between the first match, we have Art, who's got his, like, he has, like, a different, like, little Uniqlo polo for every round, and he's swapping out, and he's got a really nice kit, and he's got that fucking kinesiology tape on his back, so he's clearly got, like, a lot of professional team attending to him, which we know. And then you pan over to Patrick, and he's kind of in his schlubby, like, Target tennis gear and whatnot. And you create the visual, like, kind of Prince and the Pauper kind of thing. But, the kind of that image we start to chip away at as we learn more about them. Like you're saying, he's, like, essentially a trust fund kid that just decided not to.
Yeah, or like...
And then Art is kind of like, yeah.
There's also another thing actually I'm thinking about now. I'm remembering where Pat, like, he goes to sign up for the competition and everything. He's like, hey, can you give me an advance on money and all that stuff? And he sees that the person who's he's working with has like a Dunkin' Donuts breakfast sandwich thing. And he just, like, he very kind of pointedly stares at it until she kind of feels guilted into giving him half of it. And kind of like, looking back on that, it's kind of like, she's like a working woman. She's probably going to be kind of hungry until lunch now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like...
Yeah, something that's kind of initially played for laughs. And this film it's got, like, eroticism and tension and stuff, but there's also, it's pretty fucking funny. And that initially is just one of those kind of joke scenes, and then it kind of, in hindsight, it does take on a different sort of implication.
There's this one quite subtle thing that was simple. So there's a part where Pat and Art are kind of going back and forth about how Pat is dating Tashi, and they have churros and bananas. And you see, this is a very subtle symbol. Because a banana is shaped like...
What is...
Are you ready for this? A big ol' schlong.
Wow. I never saw that one coming. They definitely have the biggest case of the not gays in human history. And the movie has every ounce of fun. Even Tashi, their first encounter in the little hotel room before things start to drive apart between them is like the perfect blend of like profoundly awkward, but also kind of like charged and just funny and, everything all at once. And Tashi knows exactly what she's doing and exactly where that's going.
Yeah, he's just... Oh my god, it's so good. But yeah, like, and then, with Patrick, another thing that he kind of does that he knows how to get into people's heads, and he will use that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And after a certain point, like, you do kind of... because what happened between him and Tashi was that, they were together and everything, but Tashi was very, very hyper-focused on tennis, to the point that as they're getting it on in bed, she's still talking about tennis. And the moment he says, "Can we maybe talk about something other than tennis?" Like she just immediately like turns off. She's like, "I got it. I need to meditate for the next hour to get ready for the thing." And they kind of come to blows. And he accuses her of being like, you just need someone to be part of your fan club. You think you can just tell me what to do and everything. Well, I'm not your little pet lapdog.
Right. Like, she makes it fairly clear throughout that her pursuit is like this sort of like pure tennis. Like, she describes what she wants out of like a match when it becomes more than just like the exchange of, a ball. But which is, if that's what her goal is, and then it's kind of cut short, at least through her own competitive career, by a knee injury. And then she starts to kind of pursue it by proxy through art. But then kind of how she treats others around her with respect to like both her own goals and like kind of their like stated desires or their needs. Like, it kind of, that's where this gets kind of gnarly and complicated.
Right, because...
And their responses to that, of course.
Yeah, because, at the beginning of the movie, you just think like Tasha's like, oh, she's this... Like, at least when I started watching it, was like, oh, she's awful. She's treating him so badly. But then...
I don't know if I ever got like an overtly negative. Like, she gets manipulative, but I don't know if it ever went so far as to be like the, like,
yeah,
evil witch or whatever.
Yeah, maybe it might just be kind of like, I don't even necessarily mean like evil witch, but just kind of like that's what I mean, like the manipulative kind of thing there. Because like they hug and you kind of see like behind his head, like she's just kind of looking at, like, she's not really thinking about him. She's just like, okay, come here, you good now? Okay, now we're gonna it's time to win, to get it together. You get the idea of like she's not really in love with him. And it's even made very explicit in the trailer itself. But then,
yeah,
and so at the beginning it was like, oh, she's just manipulating him for, her own gain. But over the course of the movie, you realize, oh, there is like a sadness to that too.
Yeah, you kind of see where it's left a sort of gulf in between herself and art, for example, like with Patrick kind of being a thing of the past. When they meet in the contemporary timeline, like, she's pretty standoffish towards Patrick because of what they've done in the past. And then kind of you sense this growing like gulf between her and Art.
Yeah, because that gulf wasn't just like, oh, they had the falling out. It was that they had the falling out. She got horribly injured, and he was not there for her. Art was there. Art rushed onto the court. Art basically was comforting her as the medics were assessing her.
Right, and Art to that end is manipulative in his own way because he was always the more kind of like aggressive about pursuing her throughout it all, and then kind of when he sees that he can't gain the competitive advantage through the literal competition of tennis, he does what he can to become the nice guy.
Yeah, to kind of be like, oh, I'll do whatever you want, if you'll be my coach and everything. Kind of like, almost like putting on like a puppy dog act.
Exactly.
It's, become friends with like Patrick, who's like, no, but that takes a toll on Art. And, that kind of starts to take a toll on like Tashi too, because Art is just so eager to please in a way that it becomes this kind of like, it doesn't feel real.
Right. And I think like kind of the like net outcome of like it's these like through these events and like the specifics aren't always like the most important with regard to the overall thrust of the relationship, but like what you get ultimately is kind of these like it's like so much overlap that like in a way everyone becomes interchangeable. He expresses this like visually in very literal senses. Tashi has a shirt. It's like a gray shirt with like, I forget what says something on it. And then Patrick ends up wearing it and he's like got it throughout the rest of the movie. Like the car advertisement that they make like becomes a poster which sort of shows up in the background in several interchanges. And then you kind of get these like almost like motific like gestures that happen. Like at one point after Tashi's injury, Art is like just kind of not coaching her, but like chucking balls at her so she can kind of stay fresh or whatnot. And she's frustrated with him because he's going easy on her, or she feels he is. And then he produces like a final little ball from his pocket to lob hard. And then later on in the match between Patrick and Art, Patrick does that exact same thing. And there's no, like, he was not present there. This isn't an intentional come on, but it's like a way to link these three people by saying they're so interconnected and so similar in some ways that their gestures become the same.
It's almost like they start to like diffuse into each other. It's by their proximity, yeah. And actually, so that scene there that you just mentioned, where like after her injury, she's like trying to practice again. She's realizing that she's not able to keep up the same way she used to. There was a really good framing that I saw here. So the camera in this scene will show either half of the court, one that Art is on, one that Tashi's on. And we see Art's half of the court. It's like there's a backdrop of the trees and everything. It's like normal background. But we see Tashi's half of the court, and she's set against the bleachers of the tennis court. And there's like a little fence there that kind of like blocks off, but you can see that she's still framed as being on the court, like even more than Art is. And that's kind of struck by the way that shows her mindset is still there, even like as she's facing the dreadful prospect of never being able to play again. Her mind is still there, her heart is still there, and she can't bring herself to admit that she might have to find something else.
Yeah, no, the film is very good at like intentionality and how it frames, and it's not screaming at you in the face like, here's what I'm saying, but it's definitely like like you're saying, like things like framing, things like how a scene's cut together. It doesn't, it is giving all this information without stating it outright or being declarative, and then it's not constraining itself to like the bounds of like literal reality. It points to help kind of convey an idea.
Yeah. And I think that the one aspect, like the one moment of the film that made me like realize where Tasha was really coming from, is like the night before the big present day match. She meets with Patrick and she tells him, I need you to lose against Art because he's not going to be able to take it. And I was interested, like, if she was really like completely 100% heartless, she would just be like, hey, if you win, I'll dump him and we can get together. And
sure. I mean, she does tell Art that she'll leave him if he loses.
Yeah.
So.
Although that kind of felt like, it's almost like she kind of said, like, is that what you want to hear? Like the way that was like kind of like framed and delivered, it didn't sound like she was really saying, I will leave you if you lose. She's like, if that's what you want to motivate you, I'll say that. But it's like, I don't know. I might have to rewatch it, honestly, because again, there's a lot of stuff that's happening.
Sure. I think this is the one thing that benefits from like kind of coming back with the full benefit of like having just the overall narrative in your pocket. You can then kind of tease apart other elements. Yeah,
because there's, the characters are very complicated here, to say the least. Like I said, Twitter's not allowed to talk about this movie. Yeah, so,
but yeah, she does kind of throw the match, or attempt to throw the match, which she then kind of shrugs at.
Yeah. And, oh my god. Now, so this is actually, because I haven't seen Call Me By Your Name. I haven't really seen, I think this is actually the first movie I've seen from Guadagnino.
Oh. It's a treat.
Yeah, this is a good one to start with, I dare say. And you had some notes here about themes you found in this movie that kind of repeated through some of his other work.
Yeah, I just think that, like, this idea that I was kind of alluding to earlier of, like, the, like, kind of character, like, subsuming one another and, like, claiming parts of their identity is something that he's really come back to time and again in kind of different... This seems to be some, like, idea that's really interesting to him. Call Me By Your Name is probably his most well-recognized film. Aside from that, in that... as in the source novel, you have Elio and Oliver, the two central characters. You could even go as like literary, as like Elio and Oliver have like the same letters in their name or whatnot, but like, their kind of most intimate moment is when they call each other by their name. So you're literally exchanging identity. Like that's kind of during their little sex scene in the middle of it, the height of this sort of summertime like sexual awakening, and then kind of later when Elio is trying to like reclaim that connection, except he's remote over the phone. Like you get that same sort of, again, this sort of thing writ literal. A Bigger Splash is maybe a bit of a stretch, but like Ray Fiennes and Dakota Johnson play like father and daughter, if I remember correctly. And they have like a weird fucking relationship, which is, again, like, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's something along those lines. And then in like Bones and All, I didn't respond to that movie as much as a lot of other folks did, but like, I guess the whole like eating somebody else is very much consuming someone, identity and all. And then I don't want to get too much into Suspiria because we may be talking about that in the near future in a few months. But the Susie Bannion character, this Dakota Johnson character, like it's kind of about this sort of like oneness with like her character becomes like very earthy and about kind of like fucking the earth and like becoming very sort of like connected to something greater, you know. And so like this idea kind of, we're looking at it in different angles, and then here we have Patrick and Art like shared gestures, like he like when he takes the tennis ball and like places it to mimic when Patrick does this mimic of Art's sort of little like wind up tick, like he uses that to fuck with him and to kind of intimate that he's had sex with Tashi at both junctures in their career when they meet about that. And so again, you're kind of taking somebody's identity that you know so well and you are using that in this case to like weaponize it. And it's also really sexy because like there's something about like becoming somebody else that is like in a way like in these films kind of the ultimate sort of intimacy.
Yeah.
You can't get closer than that.
Yeah. Also, I'm just gonna say that scene is because I was like, oh my god, he was gonna do like the ball against the tennis racket thing, and like, I was like, oh, that happens, like, oh, and like you said, that's like, it's a very, again, like especially for a movie that's exploring these dynamics like that, these dynamics of like, you know, there's like envy going on. There's from all the characters here, like they're each envious of each other for different things. It's like Art's envious of like, you know, the skill or you know, Pat's relationship. You know, he's envious of Pat's relationship with Tashi, Pat's skill. He's envious of Tashi's skill. Tashi is envious of Art's ability to play. Anyways, like early on in the movie, like she mentions like, you know, he's recovering from an injury. He's like, you know, oh, if I would have done anything to have recovered like that, anything. You know, and Pat is envious of, again, like Art's relationship with Tashi and probably like his success too, because Pat had that head start. He was a professional player, but he had like that skill, but he didn't have the discipline to seal the deal and win his matches. And you also kind of get a lacking of like all of the like prowess that we see aside from the match when they're dueling each other. It's all hearsay. Yeah. Right? Like we're told in like various like sports analysis reports that how Art's doing, and we have this sort of nebulous notion that Patrick has had this professional career of however illustrious or not it is, but like all of the tennis that we see is directly linked to their relationship to Tashi, and she brings out the best and the worst in all of them, and they do the same to each other. Yeah, it's just it's so I need to rewatch this already. It's really engaging. And yeah, like, you know, with the ending, then it's like they, you know, and like it's getting like so intense, like they're moving up the court closer and closer to each other, and eventually it ends like with Art, like he does like a big spike, like he leaps, does a massive spike, but he's about to fall, hurt himself, and Patrick catches him. They have a big old hug. Crowd goes wild. And what's interesting is that, like, that happens, and Tashi goes, "Come on!" Which mirrors what she said when they first saw her play, and she, like, absolutely crushed her opponent then. And it's kind of like she got that thrilling tennis experience that she wanted. This, like, that... Yeah, she's like, that come on could be an expression of frustration, which she kind of does at intervals, and Patrick imitates that too, but like afterwards you get like, you know, that she
got that release.
Yeah, it's like, because she's smiling, she's kind of like, you can tell that there's like a positive emotion there too. Now that said, because like that's kind of like where the movie kind of like wraps up and everything.
It's the perfect final shot.
Yeah, and because
for that movie,
there's gonna be quite a bit of drama going on. Once
they're gonna get it on like the second they get off the court.
Oh my god! But
I got the same exact vibe. You know, like at the end of Eyes Wide Shut, when like Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise are in the toy shop, and she just like pulls them aside, and she's like, "There's one thing we have to do. We have to fuck," and that's just it. You're like, there's like the same energy for me here.
yeah. Sadly, I actually haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut yet. I'm so sorry.
Oh my god!
I know.
It's so good. Well, I mean, okay, I'll have some like robed cultists whisk you away.
Oh. Sorry, can't come into work today. I need to watch this movie.
Have to go out to an estate in Jersey or wherever the fuck they go and look at some blurred bodies.
I'm either about to go see a movie or I'm about to find out exactly which conspiracy theories were real all along. But no, yeah, Challengers it's just this fascinating stuff, like these three different characters exploring how they hurt each other, how they prop each other up, how they almost like feed on each other, and in return push each other in different directions. It's absolutely fascinating, totally thrilling. I was like gripped from the beginning to end. Yeah.
No, it's I was grinning like an idiot the whole time when it wasn't just biting my lip or something.
Yeah. Like I was sitting there like 5 minutes in, and I was just saying to myself, "Oh yeah, we're watching a real movie today, boys." But yeah, any other thoughts about Challengers?
Yeah, no, I think that kind of like, it's something that there's always going to be something more to say about it, but it's just such an exhilarating ride.
Yeah, it's like, and definitely like I'm sure there's much more that we could talk about, like the technical details and everything, but I think that this is a good kind of just like our initial impression. I just saw it like a few hours ago. You saw this a little further back, so we've had more time to kind of marinate with it. But yeah, great movie, and definitely I have to see more of Guadagnino's filmography now.
Yeah, he's a good one. He just like really knows how to kind of, like I said, create tone in something, like evoke a certain specific feeling and kind of just commit that to the whole, like the totality of the film in every way that it can contribute that.
Yeah. Well, I think there'll be a good spot to kind of wrap up for tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to hear more of our thoughts about other movies, you can find me at Daniel Goldhorn on YouTube.
And I'm at Sloshed Cinema on Tumblr.
Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all in a couple weeks. Take care.
See ya.